20 and 30 years ago at their farm, which was way out further west. Has anyone ever come? Anyone been to the club long enough that you were at the picnic at my house? Okay.
I don't think I've been to your house, but I was at Stanky.
Okay. So and the Psyche started doing it again after we moved away. So if it was in the less than 15 years ago. Okay. Yeah. So we did it for like 12 years, and then moved away. 10 years. We moved away from Wisconsin 10 years ago. So anyways, we were coming up here, like 20 some years ago. Our family and several other families with little bitty kids, we would do camping trips and stuff together. And someone came up with the bright idea. They found this place called Lost Lake. We used to always do a chanterelle for there, but before that we're going to have this camping thing at Lost Lake Campgrounds, which is kind of a cool spot. Anyways, I was the last person to arrive because I think I was teaching at a college at the time, and arrived after dark, go into my tent, everyone was already asleep, and went to sleep, and when I woke up in the morning, everyone was already awake and down at the beach and playing, and again, we had all these little kids there, and I unzipped the tent and peeked outside, and all around me, if you've ever been to this campground before, at this time of the year, all around me were like thousands of giant chanterelles. It was unreal. I'd never seen anything like this before. And so I go scurrying down to the lake, and basically the first thing my wife said was, "You saw, right?" I was like, "Yes." So that started a really special annual reunion of our families, because all the other families, they didn't know anything about wild mushrooms, and they knew I did. And so we would bring food, and then we would eat all these chanterelles. And I have a very famous photo. I should have thought about this while I was sitting here and got it on my phone. There's a famous photo of me. We would cook on these big fires with great big giant cast iron pans. There's a photo of me stirring a giant pan of chanterelles with a canoe paddle. Because it was that many. And so it was really, really great. Okay, so this went on for several years. And then the families, some moved away, and some their kids were older and no longer wanted to come. So my family was sort of the last one wanting to do this. And so I talked to other famous board members of the club, longtime board members, because it was like 5 of us were the board for like over 10 years, 12 years, 15 years. The Peter and Colleen Babuska, they took turns as presidents for years, and the lady who still is the treasurer.
Oh, Peg was the treasurer.
Peg Overbeck, she was a longtime member as well, and always the treasurer for like decades. And then a few other people had like the same task. Anyways, I proposed the idea to them. I'm like, so I have an idea for like a weekend away foray over several days. The club doesn't do anything like that. And I had this really super special spot, my chanterelle spot, that I told people about but didn't tell them where it was. Like, yeah, the club like 30 and 40 and 50 years ago used to do stuff like that, but we got away from it. So yeah, let's try it out. So booked all of the cabins at Lost Lake. And so for the first 2 years, the entire group that went, because there's only like 40 or 50 people maybe that could go, we took all of the cabins, and we had like a sort of a lodge cabin that we would have presentations, and we'd pick all these chanterelles and other mushrooms, and we would see, just like today, Tavis mentioned this is the first time ever seeing something in Wisconsin, we would see every single year weird species that were the first time ever recorded in the state. So we did that for, like I said, 2 years in the cabins, but the cabins were kind of falling apart. They were built by the CCC a long time ago. They were falling apart, so they closed them down, and so we didn't have access to them. So when my wife and I were visiting up here, trying to find another spot to do this in the fall, we were coming down this road and happened to see this little Pine Hotel, and we needed to stop for the night. So we pulled in, and it was the family that owned before the Ferrises. The Ferrises have been here for like 15 years as owners. Before that, it was Dale and does anyone remember I forget. Who? Kathy. Yeah, Dale and Kathy, yeah. Yeah, Kathy had very, very bad back problems and everything. I guess she still does. Anyways, so we pulled in and stayed the night, and I think maybe no one else was staying there, so we were chatting them up and everything. And then, what are you doing up here? We're like, well, we're picking a lot of mushrooms. And in fact, we're trying to find a place to do this event. And they're like, oh, you should host your event here at our hotel, and you can use like the town hall and stuff like that. So that's what we did. And they had the place for just the last 2 years they had it, then they sold it to Mark and Julie, and then they moved in, and then, you know, just a few years ago, they built the restaurant and other things with it. But in the meantime, so Mark Ferris and Julie, they moved up from Illinois to retire up here, and of course, naturally got even busier running this in their retirement. And the previous owners, he was a truck driver teacher. He taught people how to get licensed to drive tractor trailers. And Julie was a teacher in Illinois. I forget what Mark did. Anyways, this was their retirement. They came up here, and the previous people, they were like about to go bust. And I think they pulled in looking for property, and Dale and Kathy were literally like taking furniture out of the hotel rooms because they were trying to sell the property, and they sort of just like bought it from them on the spot at night when they pulled in. It's kind of you have to ask Julie about the story. This is sort of how it went down. And anyways, Mark was a real go-getter and became like a big shot in the town and wanting to bring other programs and stuff to town and spruce up the what's the shooting event called?
Trap shoot.
Yeah, one of the,
happening today.
yeah, it's often been on the same weekend as this event. And anyways, so in talking to them about the mushrooms, and they would come over here and see the mushrooms, he's like, this must be a special spot. And he's like, would you say this is the best spot for mushrooms in Wisconsin? And at the time, I'd never been over to Cable, where this was called the Northwoods Foray a long time ago. But then when we found the Cable spot, and I also started that event in Cable a few years after this one, I decided to call that the Northwoods Foray because we were going to have the Nama Foray there, and we were going to call it the Northwoods Foray. Anyway, so he got me to go to some sort of a political meeting or whatever and declare that, yes, this is the greatest spot for mushrooms. So that's how the mushroom capital of Wisconsin got on their sign. There is activity. So we found so many different species. That was the first time record ever here. It was pretty amazing. And then, what's that?
Was it a Fluvius?
What do
Was
you
there a Fluvius discovered up here?
So there's a Pluvius that was discovered near Madison by Steve Nelson, a longtime professor at UW-Madison, a very famous chemist. He found a really oddball, super colorful